What's up guys, and today I'm bringing you my operator analysis on Pulse. For Pulse's primary, you have the choices between the UMP submachine gun or the M10 semi-automatic shotgun. The UMP is actually pretty accurate, it has barely any recoil. The only issue I ever had with it is that the fire rate's kinda low, so it kinda lacks that stopping power. As for the M10 shotgun, it has a lot of power to it. It also has some decent range to it. The only issue you're going to come across with the M10 is that it has a lot of kick to it because that power is really strong. So if you start unloading all 7 rounds at a time at your enemy, it's going to have a lot of kick to it and you might miss. When it comes to picking these two weapons, it really depends on the map I'm on, but in most occasions I like picking the M10. It's a really good shotgun, and since it's semi-automatic, it's actually super easy to take out multiple enemies. Now for Pulse's secondary weapons, here's the choices between the M45 or the 5.7 USG. Both handguns are pretty good. I usually run the higher powered handgun, but when I pick Pulse, I pick the one with the higher mag. Mainly because the damage of the two pistols are slightly different, so I'd rather have that high magazine over that high power for Pulse. Now for Pulse's gadget, you have the choices between barbed wire or nitrocell. And honestly guys, there's really no reason not to pick nitrocell, especially with Pulse. Mixing a nitrocell with Pulse's ability gives you so much potential during a round. Barbed wire is a great way to slow down your enemies, but honestly it's not worth switching it for nitrocell. And since your Pulse, you'd be a lot more effective with nitrocell. Now I'm going to be talking about Pulse's gadget, which is his heartbeat sensor. So Pulse's special ability is a heartbeat sensor that could detect enemies through walls. So with the sensor you could detect enemies from 9 meters away, and the closer they get, the faster the heartbeat sensor sounds. As recording this video, it takes around 1.4 seconds for him to switch from his heartbeat sensor to his primary weapon. When Pulse is scanning with his heartbeat sensor, you could actually detect enemies in real time. Two important things to note about his heartbeat sensor is that if he activates it, he actually makes a noise when he does it, so sometimes the enemy can hear that. Sometimes you have to be cautious about that because if the enemy hears you pull out your heartbeat sensor, they know you're there. The second thing to note about the heartbeat sensor is that if the enemy has an IQ on their team, when she is using her gadget, she could actually see you using your heartbeat sensor. And this is really bad for anybody playing Pulse because when IQ uses her gadget, she actually has her pistol out. So if IQ spots you using that heartbeat sensor, she's probably going to shoot you through the wall. Also, one last thing to mention is that if Thatcher throws EMP grenades at you, Pulse's heartbeat sensor is temporarily disabled for a few seconds. Now I'm going to be talking about Pulse's role in the team. Pulse doesn't really have a set role in the team, but he could be a really vital teammate when he becomes a roamer. The reason I say this is because since Pulse has that heartbeat sensor, he could easily see where the enemies are located. And this is really important for two reasons. One being that your teammates get intel on where the enemies are coming from, which gives them time to rotate positions and have a better angle on the enemy. And the second thing would be having that flank ready in case your teammates are getting too much pressure put to them. Since you can see your enemies with that heartbeat sensor while you're providing the flank, you could easily see the enemy's location, and not only that, if somebody's watching for the flank, you could easily get the drop on them. Also, if the enemy team is really pushing the objective, you have to make moves. Also, just by letting the enemy team know exactly where you're at, it makes them really paranoid and you provide a lot of pressure on them. Because if you run away after you try providing that flank and the enemy team comes for you, you know exactly where they are because your heartbeat sensor, but they don't know where you are. So you easily get the advantage on them. One major thing that people could do as Pulse that I don't really see them do often is provide crossfire from the ceilings. Since you could easily detect your enemies with that heartbeat sensor, you could easily shoot them through the ceiling if you're above them or below them. And this could really help out your team because if they're having a gunfight and they really can't win that fight, you could easily help them out by providing crossfire from the bottom or the top ceilings, because in most cases the enemy is going to be very stationary and you could easily pick them off one by one. Also, not all ceilings are breakable in Rainbow Six Siege, so make sure that the ceiling you're looking at is breakable before the enemy team comes. One of my favorite things to do with Pulse is to use his nitrocell to attack the enemy from below. You basically scan the roof above you with your heartbeat sensor and wait until your enemies are right below you, and when that happens, just throw your nitrocell on the ceiling that's breakable and detonate your nitrocell. You can get really easy and satisfying kills with this method. So now I'm going to go over some mistakes people make when they play Pulse. The first mistake on the list would have to be not calling out where the enemy teams are at. When you play Pulse, it's really important to let your team know exactly where the enemy is at. Make sure to call out the enemy's position when you're Pulse, because if you don't, you're not really helping out your team. And not only that, if you're getting surrounded by a lot of people, your teammates can't help you because you never called it out. Rainbow Six Siege is all about communication, so you have intel on the enemy. It's important to tell your teammates. So the second mistake on the list would have to be getting caught off guard on your sensor. When I play Pulse, sometimes this happens to me because I like to be on my cardiac sensor just to know where the enemies are at. But sometimes I don't notice that they drone me out. So they know I'm there and they know I'm on my sensor, so they rush me with either Ash or Hibana or one of the fast operators. and this usually gets me killed every time. So you really have to pay attention to your surroundings, whether it be the noises or how fast the heartbeat's moving towards you. And finally, the last mistake I see people make with Pulse is that they try to wallbang when the enemy is moving all over the place. If you're playing Pulse and you see a person through the wall with your cardiac sensor, you gotta be really patient and wait until the person's standing still or stationary. But if you try hitting them right away and you miss, you just give away your position and your teammates are probably gonna rotate towards you. Now guys, I'm gonna be rating Pulse on 3 things, which is loadout, gadget, and team efficiency. For Pulse's loadout, I'm gonna give him a 8 out of 10. Both weapons are actually pretty good. I really like how accurate the UMP is. Having no recoil on the gun really helps with headshots. And as for the M10, it packs a real punch, it has good range, and since it's semi-automatic, it's an absolute beast. And the biggest thing I like about his loadout is that he's given Nitro Cell, which is an amazing thing for him, because that heartbeat sensor allows him to take out enemies with that Nitro Cell from the floor. The one thing that did hinder his score was that his UMP is kind of weak when it comes to his firing rate, and that's the main reason his score ended up being an 8 out of 10. Now for Pulse's gadget, he gets an easy 10 out of 10 for this one. A lot of people say that Pulse's ability is a little bit overpowered, and I can see why. Having the ability to see the enemy through the wall at any given time is just an amazing gadget to have with you. Since you have that heartbeat sensor, you could easily tell your teammates where the enemies are coming from, and on top of that, you have the chance to shoot them through the wall if you detect their heartbeat. So Pulse's gadget is basically like wall hacks. And I know when the enemy team is running a Pulse, I'm a lot more cautious when it comes to entering a building or breaking a window, because you could really never know when he's actually watching you and waiting to kill you. So that's why his gadget gets an easy 10 out of 10. For Pulse's team efficiency, he's going to get an 8 out of 10. Having a roamer like Pulse could really help out the team by slowing down the push of the attacking team. The biggest aspect about Pulse is that he provides intel on the enemy's location. And this could overall help out your team, because once you know your enemy's location and the direction they're coming from, the whole team could rotate positions so they have better angles on the enemies. So this is why I gave Pulse an 8 out of 10 for his team efficiency. So adding all 3 scores up gives Pulse's overall a 9 out of 10. Well, that's the end of the video. I hope you guys enjoyed watching. If you did, hit that like button. And if you like watching more content like this, subscribe to my channel. Also, I like hearing your guys' feedback on the video, so don't forget to leave it down in the comment section below. And once again, thanks for watching.